Alright, so Hesper's Galaxy has officially made it to YouTube, but what does this mean for... You ever owned a Wii? A Wii U perhaps? Maybe even both? Because if so, there's no excuse for you not to know about these. Ah yes, Minigames? The series of games that represented these fun little avatars never really sported a real name, so let's call them the me-centric games. You know, we sports, we fit, we play, we can forget about this one. Let's not forget about the 3DS games such as Tomodachi Life and Miitopia, which I still cherish to this day, and the beloved Nintendo Land for the Wii U. These games all star Nintendo's Miis, which, as you all may know, began their journey back when the Nintendo Wii released in 2006, along with the Mii channel, thanks to the iconic Shigeru Miyamoto. These lovable avatars were first shoved into the spotlight with Wii Sports, a game that was packed in with the release of the Wii, allowing you and up to 3 other players to play as your Miis and face off in sports like bowling, tennis, boxing, and more. This game was such a mass success that Nintendo put out Wii Sports Resort, which is pretty much what would be considered a sequel to its predecessor. This sequel did the job well. But enough of where things started, because obviously more Mii-centric games debuted on the Wii and other Nintendo consoles to come after it. Anyways, today we'll be comparing 2 of these Mii-centric games, Wii Party and Wii Party U. Surprisingly, I don't hear people look back on these games that often, especially with Wii Party U. And in fact, over the years I've been searching for its original soundtrack, and just recently, in 2020, have I found it. But these 2 games follow the same premise. They share the same concept. They both act as party-style mini-games to play with family and friends, or computer players if you're lonely as hell, and have different game modes and difficulties to dabble in. They're practically the same thing, except the second one is for the next generation console with new games, new modes, and some upscaling, along with some graphical improvements. So considering how similar the 2 games are, this isn't some apples to oranges comparison. I'll be splitting up my comparison into the following 5 categories. Category 1, game modes. Category 2, games. Category 3, mini games. Category 4, soundtrack. And Category 5, replayability. I'll be scoring in points from 0 to 10 for each category. Then, whichever title rings up the most points wins the title of Superior Party. And with all of that being said, let's begin this comparison. We're starting with Category 1, the game modes. These are basically the categories containing the types of games you can play. I would call them the bones of the games, but there are several things wrong with how that sounds. Anyways, there are plenty of different kinds of games in each mode, which gives you a huge variety of gameplay experiences to choose from. But also screw Nintendo for making me make decisions. This is supposed to be fun, not stressful. This first category will be pretty short, yet necessary to cover everything, so let's breeze through it. With Wii Party, the categories for game modes are party games, games for up to 4 players, pair games, which is exactly how it sounds for up to 2 players, and house party, which has between 2 and 4 players. Wii Party U names things a bit differently with categories like TV Party, games for up to 4 players like the first game's party games mode. House Party, which is not to be confused with the first game's mode under the same name, as this version treats the gamepad as a primary control in each of its games. And then there's Gamepad Party with games for up to 2 players like the first game's pair games mode. Of course, there's free play for standalone minigames in both Wii Party and Wii Party U, which is awesome, especially if you want to practice demolishing other players without playing one of the other standard game modes. The way I ended up ranking these was pretty basic. The modes themselves are very similar and loaded with fun, but I found myself ranking Wii Party a little bit higher with a score of 8 points, and Wii Party U with the score of 6. My reasoning for this primarily is because overall, I found that the game modes in the first game are just better executed than they are in the sequel. I think the gamepad modes in Wii Party U brought it lower for me, even though obviously they had to be incorporated into the game because, I mean, hell, it's the Wii U. But when playing the gamepad modes, despite the game modes in both games being very similar, I just have a lesser opinion on them as they seem to have added them just to be seen as a Wii U emphasis on the U game, not just a clone of the first game. Whereas they should have been added for the purpose of making gameplay more dynamic and building upon the first title's game modes with more interesting features. In other words, the game modes in Wii Party U aren't terrible, but they feel more like a, we have to add some gamepad games because that's what we gotta do. It's the Wii U, come on guys, type of deal. I don't know how else to put it. And y'all are allowed to disagree as this is more of an opinion than a fact, but yeah, Wii Party 8, Wii Party U 6. And then we've got category 2, the games. Do you normally have some sort of fun mechanic, whether that be moving along a board game map, dressing up at a fashion show, or even playing bingo? And of course, most of the modes incorporate minigames, which we'll get into soon. One thing I found is that some games returned with a new coat of paint. I noticed that Swap Meet became team building in the newer game, and honestly, it makes more sense. But I'm gonna quickly go over some highlights of some of the more well-known and popular games, because let me clarify, this is not an analysis video. Okay, alright, so you're not allowed to say you played Wii Party without having played Board Game Island. This has got to be one of, if not the most recognizable game in the first Wii Party. I know some of y'all see anything Board Game Island related and go, Professor? Hey yo! And don't act like I call you out. Board Game Island is the first game you see once you reach that home menu, and because of this, it ends up being a lot of people's first game. I mean, it sure was for me when I was a kid. But essentially, for those who don't know or haven't played, Board Game Island takes place on, well, an island set up like a board game. Come on, bros, in the name. Where you roll dice and move along the board, encountering some obstacles and challenges along the way. Your goal is to reach the top of the island before anyone else, where there's plenty of golden treasures for your me to indulge in. And of course, there's mini games that, when you place in the top 3, can help you get extra die to help you move along your path. The minigames also determine your position when the game decides which players roll their dice first. The whole game is fun with a lot of luck-based obstacles that really rely on the numbers that you roll with your dice. So it's not entirely skill-based. Your friend could be ass at all the minigames, but be on a luck streak with their dice rolls and somehow win. That's the way of Board Game Island. I know it's like the first game you see, but it's truly a gift to mankind. I always gotta pull it up at parties because it'll never fail to light up a room, and Wii Party U is gonna have to really bring the heat after this. Oh, come on! So these two games are under similar modes, and clearly one was based off of the other. But let's quit stating the obvious and look at Gamepad Island in comparison to Board Game Island. I understand that it's supposed to be a sequel or whatever, but I really don't like that they revolve the game mechanics around each player holding the gamepad. It gets tedious after a while, and rolling die with the gamepad, I mean, I don't know, like, it just isn't as enjoyable as shaking the Wii remote to roll, in my opinion, but again, that's my opinion. This whole video is my opinion, okay? Anyways, I feel that beyond that, the game is pretty fun, although I still wish that they had approached it a little bit differently. I personally would have enjoyed it more if it expanded on the Board Game Island premise, maybe expanded on what was already there from the map to the quest itself, rather than being heavily reliant on the gamepad mechanics and all that stuff. But moving on to some other games, I'd love to bring up one of Wii Party U's bangers, Me Fashion Plaza. I always get a kick out of playing this one with friends because for some reason, it gets every one of us heated a bit more than the other games do, and I love that for us, I really do. Not in a bad way though, like more so in a competitive type of manner, like I'm gonna roll this dice and steal that outfit piece you've been trying to get for the past few turns because I'm a menace and I'll never let you win. But this game is so much fun, dog. You start with a clothing garment from one of the categories, and you essentially have to rack up points by either choosing the outfit pieces with the most points and putting them together, or putting together matching sets to get a bonus. Then eventually you can strike a pose on the plaza stage and get those points added to your overall score. Like most of the games, you roll dice to move forward, but with this one you can acquire different types of dice, like the slow roll, 1, 2, 3 roll, and so on. This basically means that you can strategically plan out your next move, and if you know what you're doing, you can manipulate the game to work for you and not against you. And I promise you, once you master the art of the dice roll, you'll get everything off the map you desire. I love it so much, it's just so damn nefarious. Shout out to me, Fashion Plaza, gotta be one of my favorite gingers for real. And on to some other bangers, we've got Wii Party's Balance Boat, which is more of a cooperative effort than a competitive one. You'll have to work together with another player to balance knees on the sails of a ship without tipping the boat. And with this one, you play many games where you and the other player must either strategize or combine your skills to win or lose, ruin y'all's relationship, and cope. Bro, I swear, like, losing 3 of the minigames or tipping the boat will change the trajectory of a friendship forever, especially tipping the boat. But I like the change of pace that comes with working together with someone rather than working against like 3 other people. And let's not forget about Spot the Sneak. It's both on Wii Party and Wii Party U. That game is dirty as hell and will give you trust issues, but I swear, it is so much fun. The premise here is that you're given normal minigames to play and whatnot, but in each round, one of the 4 players will be appointed sneak at random. And the way you find out you're the sneak is if your remote doesn't rumble when everyone else's does. You see how the lying and like masking between friends would start, right? Yeah, I'm telling you, it's dirty. But you're probably wondering, what the hell is a sneak and what does that player do? Well, they cheat. Simple as that. They cheat. The sneak will be able to use an unfair advantage to win a minigame, whether it's repelling the sheep in Random Jam or not having to do a damn thing in Cliff Riders. The inexperienced sneak might spam their advantage to the point where it's obvious to the other players, whereas the pro gamer sneak might use it sparingly to where it's barely noticeable that they have a leg up in the competition. Of course, after each minigame, players have to vote on who the sneak is. And if you get it right, still points from the sneak. If you get it wrong, the sneak steals points from you. And after 3 or 5 rounds, the player with the most points wins the game. I never do win, but I always enjoy the hell out of Spot the Sneak, mainly because cheating is fun. But God forbid you be a horrible liar, because you will not survive the game. And I'd like to mention one more game rather briefly, and that's Wii Party U's Feed Me, aka Food Service Simulator. You either have a burger joint or coffee shop. You pick one of the players to be a cashier. Each customer player tells the cashier whatever they want to order off the menu, and the cashier has to remember who ordered what and serve the correct meal to each player. After the meals have been served, the customers must rate their orders based on how right they are. There's no point system for this game, no minigames, no dice rolling, none of that. But I wanted to throw this one in here because if your friends are particularly insufferable menaces, in my experience, you will have so much fun with this game. I've had play sessions where someone will order something, then forget they ordered it, then claim you got their shit wrong. Sessions where I was the cashier and my friends would order the most random sequence of menu items in the most insane cadence possible. And it's just incredible the interactions you can have while playing this game. Please gather some of your funniest friends and play it if you can. You won't regret it. Now, there's obviously plenty more games to play, but let me reiterate, this is not an analysis, so I won't be covering them all. Don't hop up in the comments telling me I'm missing some. But to sum it up, the games in each title are wonderful for the most part. Which brings me to my next gripe with, you guessed it, Wii Party U. Nothing major with this one. I enjoyed the games a lot, but many of the games in Wii Party U, I just never touch. And even though there are some games I don't touch in the original Wii Party, it just wasn't as many as with its sequel. Like, I'll be honest, I've never met a soul who's played tabletop foosball or any of the gamepad party games because, like, think about it. Most people who play Wii Party U probably play for the Wii Party and not the U. That's just my thought though. Nevertheless, when it comes to games, I have got to give Wii Party a 9. I play almost all the games in Wii Party whenever I'm able to do a long play session with friends or family. But with Wii Party U, I have to select games carefully to ensure the experience is, well, entertaining. So I'll give Wii Party U a 7. And on to category 3, the minigames. This category is pretty straightforward. We're diving into the core of the gameplay, which is the minigame selection. Unlike your everyday average generic party game you might find in a clearance bin, both games have a healthy selection of minigames to play. You either stumble across these minigames randomly depending on the game, or you can navigate through a few menus and select individual ones if you're craving a certain game at the moment. In addition to playing all the game modes and games, I ended up playing all of the minigames individually and gathering the highlights. You gotta do what you gotta do, I suppose, but here were my conclusions. With Wii Party, you have a fun variety of games here. You have some quick and thrilling ones like Flag Fracas, some longer games like Walk Off, some frustrating ones like Follow Your Face, and even a few weird ones like Cry Babies. But this game also had some luck-based games where you just took chances and an algorithm decided your fate. I always hated those and still do. Yes, they're satisfying to somehow win, and yes, they do give a fair chance to every player, but good grief, they don't even feel like games to me. Some people are gonna be mad at me for this take, but I don't care. Be for real. I counted 6 luck-based games in Wii Party. There should only be like 2 in my opinion, but let's move on, shall we? On to Wii Party U, we're looking at something pretty similar. Some honorable mentions from this title include memory games like Recipe Recall, precision games like Cliff Riders, and just plain strategic fun like Maze Malaise. I know so far it seems like I'm biased against Wii Party U, but I swear I'm not. I, believe it or not, love the game. I'm young, I grew up with both in my childhood, so I'm not one to lean towards either based on nostalgia, because they are both nostalgic for me. And I'm aware that what I'm about to say might come as a shock to y'all, but Wii Party U has better minigames in my opinion. There, I said it. Not by a landslide, but enough to give Wii Party U minigames a 10 and Wii Party a 9. Trust me, I can't believe it either. I will acknowledge that Wii Party minigames are top tier, but Wii Party U, topper tier. Yeah, topper tier. Maybe even toppest tier. Cry about it. Next, we have category 4, the soundtrack. A soundtrack can heavily define a gameplay experience, and if you have a bad one, yeah. But this category was especially hard because the soundtracks for both of these games really did go hard. They both have a similar style with the sort of charming, upbeat kind of sound going on in both, and they just want to make you get up and dance. Let me start by saying that the Wii Party soundtrack is phenomenal. I love so many of the tracks used for this game. They really did do a good job setting the tone for each game mode and minigame. I love that consistent groovy party vibe the music gives off, but that's not to say Wii Party U didn't have any bangers either. I still have some of the music hanging out in the back of my head. Again, they're both similar sound-wise, but which is better? I'll address right here that I've heard many others compare the soundtrack in terms of how close to the original it is, which I disagree with, mainly because that's more of a biased way to look at it. Instead, I tried to see the soundtrack as its own separate thing, and let me tell you, I enjoyed it a lot better that way. I think as a tie with this one, as much nostalgia as I had with the original Wii title soundtrack, I can't deny I found a lot of bangers in the Wii U title as well, and after listening to them both, I couldn't raise a question of which was actually better than the other. I even tried picking up my favorite tracks and ended up with the same numbers, so at this point, I'm content with giving both of them 8 beautiful points each. Finally, let's look into category 5. Replayability. This category is a culmination of the previous ones in a way. One important thing to consider when playing a game is being able to come back to it, or more so, wanting to come back to it. So if you pick up a game, play for a while, and leave it collecting dust for next months or years, that's not a very good thing. Video games are expensive. You want to get games that are worth that money, and not any one and done games. With Wii Party, I believe its replayability is strong, considering it's still a party staple, at least in my home, several years later. And I know that some of my mutuals say the same thing. I have a lot of memories with this game and still come back to play it some more every now and then. As for Wii Party U, even though there's a lot of good fun in that game, I never found myself coming back to it as often for some reason. Like, I don't hear many people talk about memories they had playing that game. I don't remember wanting to pull out the game during parties and gatherings in that house as much as I did with the first game. And that's disappointing, to say the least. I feel that even though the minigames were good in that game, they weren't enough to save it and make it sort of a party staple, you know what I mean? However, this isn't to say that the game is a one and done. I have enjoyed playing this game multiple times, including the time I replayed for this video, and I found myself coming back to the game when I stumbled across it. I just didn't find myself replaying it like I did with the first title. I think the classic Wii Party has an upper hand in this category with a smacking 10 points, and Wii Party U with a 5. So let's look back at our points and see where that leads us. Wii Party, congratulations! You have been crowned Superior Party! How's it feel? Bet it feels good. It was a tough competition between these two, and honestly, I salute the loser for still being a good party game. To be honest, I may have come out of this with a greater appreciation for both games. Also, free my man's Party Phil. Nintendo, he did nothing wrong. Bring back Party Phil. And one more thing, I better not see any comments talking about some, actually, what about Wii Chess? Why didn't you mention Wii Chess? Shut the hell up.